Captain Aaron Blake stood on the bridge of the United Earth Fleet's lead cruiser, his eyes locked on the main scanner display. The soft hum of the ship's engines and the rhythmic beeping of sensors filled the room. At first, it seemed like an ordinary patrol near the edge of Empire space, nothing unusual to report. But then the readings came. Strange signals appeared on the edge of the display, shapes that shouldn't exist, shadows in the void that didn't follow any rule of physics. The crew stared as the scanner drew the outline of a massive object, bigger than any known warship, yet it carried no familiar energy trace. It was not on any registry, not even the Empire's secret classes. For a moment, everyone thought the equipment had failed. Lieutenant Claire Donovan leaned closer to her console, her face pale but determined. "Captain, this thing isn't just a ship," she said softly, almost like she was speaking to herself. "It looks alive." The words made the bridge fall into silence. Several officers exchanged quick, nervous glances. To call a starship alive sounded ridiculous, and yet the image on the scanner twisted, pulsing faintly, as if it had a heartbeat. Ensign Harper, a young officer who still carried the eagerness of someone fresh from the academy, shook his head. "It must be a glitch, sir. Radiation from the border storms, maybe. I'll recalibrate the sensors." He tried to sound confident, but his voice cracked at the end. Blake didn't answer immediately. He kept watching the slowly moving shape, his instincts telling him this was no simple error. The object began to shift course. No engines flared, no thrusters fired, no gravitational waves were detected. It simply turned, drifting with smooth, impossible grace through the darkness. The crew froze. Even the most advanced stealth ships needed some propulsion signature. This thing had none. It was as if space itself was carrying it along. Claire whispered again, her voice trembling now. "It's watching us." Blake turned to her, startled by the choice of words, but he couldn't deny that she might be right. Every time the fleet adjusted position, the unknown object seemed to respond, as though mimicking or acknowledging their presence. It wasn't random. It was aware. Then something happened that made even the most skeptical officers fall silent. Empire ships scattered across the border region suddenly changed formation. Their movements were rushed, sloppy, filled with panic. The comms filled with bursts of static, fragments of terrified voices shouting warnings. Blake ordered the signals recorded, and as the fragments cleared, they could hear the fear in alien tones. "It's here. Pull back. All units retreat." The Empire ships were retreating, not regrouping for attack, but fleeing like prey before a predator. Aaron Blake clenched his jaw. The Empire's fleets were notorious for their arrogance. They had never retreated from a human patrol, not once. Yet here they were, scattering at the sight of this unknown vessel. Something about it struck terror in them, something deep and ancient. The bridge crew tried to hide their unease, but Blake could feel the tension spreading like fire. Claire kept staring at her console, her knuckles white against the controls. Harper muttered to himself as he recalibrated again and again, desperate to prove it was a mistake. But every correction only sharpened the terrifying truth. The object was real. It was close, and it was unlike anything they had ever seen. Suddenly, the ship's lights dimmed for a second. The scanners flared with distorted images before clearing again. It was almost like the unknown vessel had swept its gaze across them, a silent acknowledgement of their presence. Blake felt his chest tighten. For the first time in his career, he was not worried about the Empire. He was worried about something far worse, something that made even their greatest enemy run in fear. He gave calm orders, though his voice carried a weight he couldn't hide. Maintain distance. No aggressive moves. Record everything. He knew Earth Command would demand every detail, every scrap of proof. If this ship was what it seemed, history itself might change. Minutes stretched like hours as the ghostly object glided past the asteroid belt. The rocks and debris shifted in its wake, but not as they would from a passing ship's thrusters. Instead, they drifted outward like iron filings around a magnet, as if some invisible field surrounded the vessel. The effect was beautiful and terrifying all at once. Claire finally turned her head, meeting Blake's eyes. "Captain, I don't think this thing is just a ship. I think it's something more. Something older than us, older than the Empire." She spoke with such conviction that even Harper stopped adjusting his console. Blake did not dismiss her this time. Deep inside, he felt the same fear. He watched as the Empire's signals grew fainter and fainter, their fleets scattering like frightened animals. Whatever this thing was, it had power beyond understanding. And it had chosen this moment to appear, right here, at the fragile edge of human and Empire conflict. He stood quietly, staring at the massive shadow that seemed to glide without effort across the black canvas of space. In all his years, he had never seen the Empire run. Yet now they were gone, their proud fleets reduced to frightened whispers on the comms. The crew of the United Earth Fleet, hardened by years of Cold War with the Empire, felt something new that day. Not the thrill of battle, not the fear of defeat, but the trembling awe of standing before the impossible. The thing before them was not a ship they knew. It moved like a ghost, and even the Empire feared to stay in its path. Aaron Blake finally broke the silence. His voice was low, but steady. "Stay sharp. Whatever that is, it's not done with us yet." The words settled over the bridge like a shadow. None of them dared to breathe too loudly, for fear the ghost might hear. The object glided past the asteroid belt in silence, its movements so smooth that it seemed to ignore the laws of inertia. No light shone from its hull, yet every fragment of rock around it bent away, as though afraid to touch it. Captain Aaron Blake kept his fleet at a cautious distance, watching the impossible ship with narrowed eyes. The Empire destroyers, known for their ruthless aggression, had already broken formation and were pulling back into the shadows. Their transmissions were filled with sharp tones of fear, words repeating over and over, "The judge has returned." Blake had no idea what that meant, but the panic in their voices was real. Lieutenant Claire Donovan leaned closer to her screen, adjusting filters and enhancing magnification. "It's not ignoring us," she said suddenly, her voice tight. "It's reacting. Every time we move, it shifts. Look." She tapped the console, displaying a pattern of their maneuvers. The unknown vessel had mirrored them, subtle adjustments that matched human fleet changes almost perfectly, as though it were watching and learning. The crew stared at the display, unease building with every passing second. Blake ordered a communication attempt. "Send standard greetings, any frequency." The communications officer obeyed, blasting waves of signals toward the ship. Not a single response came back. No static, no error, only silence. The ghost ship simply drifted closer, as if the hails were beneath its notice. Empire destroyers, usually predators that chased humans across contested sectors, were now scattering like frightened prey. One of the larger Empire cruisers made the mistake of holding position too long. The ghost ship tilted ever so slightly toward it, and in that instant, the Empire vessel panicked. Engines roared at full thrust, breaking formation in wild retreat. They did not even attempt to fire weapons. The crew on Blake's bridge exchanged stunned glances. The mighty Empire, which had never shown fear of humanity, was abandoning entire patrols to get away from a single vessel. Claire whispered, almost to herself, "They know what it is. They've seen it before." The thought made everyone on the bridge tense. If the Empire feared it, then this was no ordinary encounter. This was history resurfacing. Blake ordered the fleet to keep distance, but not to disengage. He wanted every detail recorded, every movement tracked. The ship's sensors were pushed to their limits, but even then, much of the vessel remained a mystery. Its shape shifted under the scanners, parts of it phasing in and out as if reality itself could not contain it fully. Sometimes it looked like a vessel, sleek and curved. Other times it resembled a massive living creature, with ridges and patterns that moved like breathing lungs. As the human fleet shadowed it, Blake could feel the weight of his crew's unease. Claire sat stiff at her station, her eyes locked on the readings. Harper muttered under his breath, trying to convince himself it was just technology they didn't understand. The rest of the officers avoided speaking at all, as if words might draw the ghost's attention. Suddenly, the stars around them dimmed, not from any natural event, but because the ghost ship passed between them and the light. Its enormous shadow stretched across their fleet. Every alarm on the bridge triggered at once: radiation spikes, gravity distortions, magnetic interference. Yet none of it seemed hostile. It was as if the vessel was brushing against their senses, probing them without touch. Then, without warning, the Empire ships that remained transmitted a single desperate warning: "Do not follow. It judges all." The transmission ended abruptly, followed by a silence that felt heavier than any threat. Blake clenched his fists at his side. The Empire's fear was clear, but he had no intention of retreating. Humanity could not afford to turn away from this discovery. Whatever this vessel was, it had just altered the balance of power in the galaxy. The ghost ship drifted closer still, its movement slow but purposeful, like a predator that did not need to hurry. The human fleet adjusted position instinctively, and again the vessel shifted with them. It was watching, studying, deciding. Blake gave the order no one wanted to hear. Stay the course. We don't run. The crew obeyed, but the tension was thick enough to choke the air. Every eye stayed locked on the viewports, watching as the ghost vessel, silent and unyielding, passed through the heart of the border zone. Empire fleets had fled. Only humans remained, staring into the unknown with both fear and determination. The first sound that broke the silence was not a voice, but a low vibration, a ripple that passed through every console, every display, every nerve in the human crew's bodies. The ghost ship had finally spoken, though not in words. Screens flickered as streams of light and images poured into them, scenes so vivid that they felt like memories forced into the crew's minds. Claire gasped as her console lit up with visions of ruined worlds. Oceans boiled, cities reduced to dust, skies burning with fire from weapons too massive to imagine. Soldiers of races unknown screamed and fell. It was not a transmission, it was a flood of history. She grabbed the edge of her station, overwhelmed by the sheer force of the images. "Captain," she whispered, her voice unsteady, "this isn't communication. It's showing us what it has seen." Aaron Blake steadied himself against his chair as more visions slammed into him. He saw fleets, larger than anything either Earth or the Empire had ever built, torn apart by the ghost ship's wrath. He saw empires rise and collapse, their arrogance shattered by a single entity that drifted through the ages. He felt a wave of despair, as though humanity had been pulled into a story much older than themselves. One of the younger officers began to shake, pressing his hands over his eyes. "Make it stop! It's inside my head!" But there was no stopping it. The ghost ship's voice was not sound, it was memory itself, crashing into the minds of all who dared to watch. Claire forced herself to focus, her lips trembling as she spoke. "Captain, it's not here to destroy us. It's searching." She pointed at her console, where amidst the destruction flashed fleeting images of forests, rivers, and children laughing. Human children. The ghost ship was comparing, testing, measuring humanity against the echoes of civilizations it had once encountered. Blake's chest tightened, or judging. The word felt heavy, final. He remembered the Empire ship's warning, "It judges all." Perhaps that was why they fled. Perhaps they had been judged once before and barely survived. The visions shifted again. The crew now saw alien rulers bowing in terror, vast cities crumbling to silence, fleets surrendering without a single shot fired. It was as if the ghost ship carried not only memories but verdicts. Those who sought endless war were shown ruin. Those who enslaved were shown chains breaking. Its judgment was merciless, its power absolute. Claire's voice broke through the silence of the bridge. "Captain, I think it wants us to choose, to prove who we are." Her eyes locked with his, wide with fear, but filled with certainty. "It's not an enemy. It's asking." The room grew cold with the weight of that idea. A ship, or a being that could end empires, had turned its gaze on humanity, and it was waiting for an answer. The ghost ship floated closer, its vast hull casting shadows across the stars. The flickering lights of memory began to slow, settling into a final image that seared itself into every human mind. A circle of stars surrounding Earth. At the center, a fragile blue world glowing like a jewel in the void. Humanity's home, displayed in perfect clarity, as if the ghost ship had plucked the vision straight from their souls. No words followed, only silence, heavy and suffocating. The message was clear without sound. The ghost ship had seen humanity. It now waited to decide whether they would be counted among the survivors of history, or erased like the others. Blake stood frozen, his breath shallow as the enormity of the moment settled over him. For the first time, he understood why the Empire had run. They weren't afraid of a weapon, they were afraid of judgment. And now that judgment hovered silently before him, staring into the heart of humanity itself. The Empire's border channels erupted with chaos. Fragmented signals cut across frequencies, carrying desperate orders and frantic cries. Entire fleets were abandoning positions they had held for centuries. Colonies that once shone with pride went dark as governors ordered mass evacuations, their voices trembling with a fear no one dared name. The message spread like wildfire. The silent judge had returned. Aaron Blake's crew intercepted dozens of transmissions, each more panicked than the last. One showed a commander screaming at his officers to retreat, his eyes wild with terror. Another carried nothing but static, broken by the repeated phrase, "It watches. It remembers." These were not the calculated strategies of the Empire. These were the voices of soldiers who had lost all will to fight. Claire Donovan studied the fragments, her brows furrowed. "They've seen it before," she murmured. "This isn't new to them. They've fought it, and they lost." Her words weighed heavy on the bridge. If the mighty Empire had once been nearly destroyed by this ghost ship, what chance did anyone else have if it turned hostile? Across the sector, Empire destroyers and cruisers twisted into erratic flight paths, colliding with each other in their desperation to flee. Civilian broadcasts leaked onto the open bands, showing entire cities in panic as rumors reached the core worlds. Families crowded transport docks, demanding escape from what they called the return of the judge. It wasn't just the military breaking, it was the Empire itself unraveling under the weight of an old legend come to life. Blake leaned forward in his chair, staring at the endless streams of collapsing order. "They're abandoning colonies without a fight," he said quietly, disbelief etched in his tone. "The Empire doesn't run. Ever." Yet here they were, leaving behind strongholds that had taken generations to build. The crew watched as the Empire's famous discipline shattered. Massive dreadnoughts, usually the pride of their fleets, turned tail and vanished into hyperspace without even forming defensive lines. On human sensors, the maps of enemy deployments lit up with gaps where entire divisions had once stood. It was not retreat in strategy, it was retreat in terror. Claire's console flashed with another burst of intercepted comms. She translated quickly, her voice low. "They call it the Silent Judge. They say it came centuries ago, before the Empire was strong and tore through their fleets like they were dust. They thought it was gone forever. Now it's back." The revelation sank into every officer's mind. The Empire's arrogance, their cruelty, their endless campaigns of conquest, all of it was being stripped away, not by war, but by memory. Fear of the Silent Judge was enough to break them. For humanity, the shift was staggering. Only months ago, Earth's fleets were small shadows against the Empire's vast armadas. But now, with one mysterious ally drifting silently at their side, the impossible was happening. The Empire was in retreat. Colonies once bristling with guns now called for ceasefire. Commanders who had mocked human strength were sending secret offers of surrender. Aaron Blake understood the weight of it all. History was turning, not because of Earth's firepower, but because something greater had appeared. Humanity's fleets, once prey, were now being left untouched, simply because the Silent Judge moved beside them. Every signal confirmed the same truth. The Empire's era of dominance was breaking. And across the galaxy, whispered on every channel, one phrase repeated again and again: "Run. The Judge has returned." The ghost ship slowed near the husk of a dead star, its colossal frame hovering in silence as if the void itself bowed to its presence. Human ships circled at a cautious distance, every sensor straining to capture what their eyes could not explain. Then the flood began again. Waves of images, stronger this time, sharp enough to pierce the mind. Aaron Blake gripped the edge of his chair as visions of Earth flashed before him. Towering cities glowing at night, oceans rolling endlessly under sunlight, forests whispering with life, children playing in open fields. It was not random. The ghost ship was searching through humanity's essence, dragging their soul into the open. The bridge crew fell silent as the images washed over them. Claire Donovan pressed a hand to her mouth, her eyes watering as she whispered, "It's looking at us. It wants to know what kind of people we are." The young ensign Harper muttered nervously, "Or it's deciding if we deserve to exist." The thought struck everyone like ice. Just as the fear took hold, alarms screamed across the bridge. Empire ships had dropped out of hyperspace, an ambush force, sleek cruisers fanning to attack formation. Dozens of them lit their weapons, targeting the Earth fleet. Blake shouted for defensive shields to be raised, his chest tight with the certainty that they were hopelessly outnumbered. Then the ghost ship moved. Without a single visible weapon, it extended an invisible field. a shimmering curtain of light that wrapped around the human fleet like a protective cocoon. Blazing plasma fire from the Empire cruisers slammed into the barrier and died instantly, absorbed as though the shots had never been fired. The bridge crew froze in disbelief. Claire's lips parted, her voice barely audible. "It's shielding us. It chose us." The Empire ships fired again and again, panic rising with every failed volley. Some broke formation, retreating in terror, while others hurled themselves recklessly at the impossible shield. The ghost ship did not strike back, it only protected. Its judgment was not expressed in destruction, but in choice. It had chosen to stand beside humanity. The crew of Blake's flagship watched in stunned silence as the barrier pulsed once more, sending a ripple outward. The Empire ships closest to it shuddered, their systems failing, their lights going dark one by one. The survivors fled, their transmissions filled with the same fear that had swept across the Empire for weeks. The silent judge had taken a side. On the bridge, no one spoke for several long moments. The hum of the ghost shield filled the silence, steady and unyielding. Aaron Blake finally exhaled, his voice rough but steady. "It saved us. Not them. Us." Claire turned toward him, her expression torn between awe and fear. "That means it found something in us worth keeping. Or maybe it's giving us one chance." The ghost ship hovered silently near the dying star, its vast presence looming over the fleet. It had tested humanity, peered into their world, weighed them against the ruins of empires past, and in that moment, it had chosen. The War Council chamber on Earth was alive with voices, each louder than the last. Generals pounded the table, demanding that the ghost ship be treated as the greatest weapon ever gifted to humanity. Politicians whispered in corners about new borders, new colonies, and the chance to finally crush the empire once and for all. The word opportunity echoed again and again like vultures circling prey. Aaron Blake stood at the center of the shoulders heavy with the weight of what he had seen. His voice cut through the chaos, calm but edged with warning. "You're not listening. That thing isn't a weapon, it's a judge. It showed us what happens to those who take and conquer without end. The Empire tried, and they nearly burned for it." But his words met resistance. Old men with cold eyes scoffed at the idea of morality. They wanted fleets, not warnings. Claire Donovan sat at the far end, her hands clasped tightly, eyes filled with something that none of the others carried: faith. When the council demanded her analysis, she spoke with quiet certainty. "It's not here to serve us. It's here to test us. If we treat it like a sword, it will turn against us. If we show restraint, it might remain." Her words unsettled the chamber, but they were not enough to silence the hunger for power. News came in during the meeting, an unexpected envoy from the Empire, their voices thin and desperate. For the first time in living memory, the enemy begged for truce. They offered concessions, even the withdrawal from contested colonies if Earth would guarantee peace. The council split instantly. Half wanted to press the advantage and finish the empire while it was broken. The other half saw in the envoy's trembling voice the chance to end centuries of blood. Blake's memory burned with the visions the ghost ship had forced into him. Endless empires collapsing, rulers destroyed by their own greed. He remembered the moment it shielded his fleet, not striking down the enemy, but simply protecting. That was the answer, wasn't it? Not conquest. Survival through restraint. One of the admirals slammed his fist on the table. "If we don't strike now, they'll recover. This is our only chance to rule the stars." Blake's reply was cold steel. "Or our chance to burn like they did." The room fell into uneasy silence. In the shadows of the chamber, Claire's eyes met his, a flicker of understanding passing between them. They had seen the same truth. The ghost ship was not giving humanity power. It was giving them a choice. And choices carried consequences. After hours of bitter debate, the final decision came. Humanity would not march on the Empire. They would accept the truce, cautious but firm. Blake left the chamber with his chest heavy, knowing the argument was not won by logic alone, but by fear of the unknown. Some still dreamed of conquest, their ambition unbroken. But for now, Earth had chosen patience. As he walked the silent corridors back to his ship, Blake looked out at the stars. Somewhere beyond them, the ghost ship drifted, watching, waiting. He could almost feel its unseen eyes pressing against him, measuring the weight of his decisions. And he wondered if the true test had only just begun. The ghost ship descended upon the Empire's central world without a sound, its massive shadow swallowing half the sky. Citizens poured into the streets, staring upward as the heavens themselves seemed to dim. No weapons fired, no broadcasts came, yet the weight of its presence pressed down like a mountain. The once proud capital, the heart of centuries of conquest, now trembled in silence. In the imperial throne chamber, the emperor sat rigid, his counselors whispering frantically around him. Reports of shattered fleets and abandoned colonies had already broken his grip on power. But now the silent judge itself had arrived. Its vast outline hung above his world, unmovable, undeniable. Even the most loyal generals refused to take up arms. No one dared to strike. Human fleets arrived moments later, holding steady at the edge of orbit. Aaron Blake's ships did not fire, did not posture. They simply stood in quiet formation beside the ghost. The message was clear to all. Humanity was not hiding behind it, but standing with it. That image alone was enough to shatter centuries of propaganda that painted humans as weak. Across the Empire's channels, surrender orders echoed. Massive war fleets powered down their weapons, their crews abandoning posts with heads lowered. Entire sectors sent transmissions of compliance before a single demand was made. Fear of the judge had broken them, but what cut deeper was the realization that it favored humanity. To resist further would not only bring its wrath, but also raise Earth to the throne they once claimed as their own. On the surface, the Emperor appeared before his people, his voice stripped of arrogance. He announced what had been unthinkable only weeks ago. The Empire would yield. He dressed it as a choice, a noble act of survival, but every citizen knew the truth. This was not a decision, but a surrender. The silent judge hovered above, its silence louder than any command. For the first time in generations, the Empire laid down its arms without a single shot fired. And for the first time, it was not they who dictated peace. Humanity stood as the deciding power, their fleets steady, their ally unspoken, yet undeniable. Aaron Blake watched from his command deck, his jaw set as the weight of history unfolded before his eyes. Humanity had not conquered through fire, but through fear that was not their own. They had been chosen, shielded, and now raised beside a force beyond imagination. The Empire had bowed not to Earth, but because the Judge had stood with Earth. And that difference would shape the galaxy forever. The ghost ship vanished as quietly as it had arrived, slipping into the void without a ripple. No trace of propulsion, no signal, not even the faint hum that had haunted human sensors. One moment it loomed above the Empire's capital, and the next it was gone, as if the stars had swallowed it whole. What remained was silence, an emptiness more unsettling than its presence had ever been. Aaron Blake stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the endless stretch of space where the Judge had disappeared. Around him, his crew whispered in awe and disbelief. Some felt relief, others unease. Claire Donovan sat at her station, her hands folded tightly as if in prayer. She did not smile at the victory, nor did she cheer for the surrender. Her voice was soft, steady. It isn't gone. It's watching. It always was. Across the galaxy, the legend spread faster than any fleet could travel. Traders spoke of it in hushed tones, calling it the shadow of judgment. Refugees carried stories that grew with every retelling, of fleets crumbling before a single glance, of rulers kneeling without a fight. Children in distant colonies whispered of the day humanity stood with the silent Judge, their voices caught between pride and fear. The name of Earth was no longer forgotten at the edge of maps. It was carved into history as the one species the Judge had spared. But with that gift came weight. Blake knew it as he read the endless reports. The Empire fractured but still breathing, human admirals pushing for expansion, politicians already whispering about new thrones. The temptation was there. The same hunger that had doomed others before. Humanity had been lifted, but not absolved. They had been seen and spared. For now. In the quiet of his quarters, Blake replayed the visions the Judge had burned into his mind. Shattered empires, arrogant rulers dragged into ruin, entire worlds silenced by their own ambition. He wondered if humanity would one day join them, if the Judge would return not as an ally, but as an executioner. Claire believed it had left them responsibility, not power. He wanted to believe her. Above 1,000 worlds, the stars burned on, silent witnesses to a galaxy that had shifted overnight. The judge's shadow lingered in every decision, every treaty, every cautious step forward. Humanity was no longer prey. They were partners of the unknown, chosen once, but never guaranteed to be chosen again. And somewhere in the endless dark, unseen eyes still watched, waiting to see what choice Earth would make next.